Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of CRATV, where we talk about politics, policy, and politicians from a conservative perspective right here in the great state of California. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can know where the conversation is taking place. Also, if you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, and in both cases, make sure you hit the notification button. That way you get notifications as soon as we go live and can participate in the live chat as the program is going on. Also wanted to let you know, for those of you who prefer to watch us on Instagram or prefer Instagram, we'll also be available on IGTV. So make sure to check us out there as well. Tons of ways for you to watch. All right, let's get into today's topic. Now, we all know everyone's pretty much dealing with COVID-19. Everything in the news, everything that you're hearing is coronavirus, COVID-19, or is tangential in one way or another to that particular issue. Well, that's allowed a number of very, very key things in the news to go kind of under the radar. And one of them actually was a pretty big deal before the coronavirus pandemic started to dominate the news. And that has to do with the impeachment of President Donald Trump. The first attempt where they went to go after President Trump, and that had to do with Russian collusion. Now, just to kind of rebuild the story, I know most of you already know this, so please forgive me if I am repeating. But you know that basically this all started with a dossier that was produced by a gentleman named Christopher Steele. He was paid by the DNC and by the Clinton campaign to put forth this dossier, or to create this dossier. And this dossier would then be used, or would be the very beginning of the impetus of an investigation by our intelligence agencies into President Trump and whether or not he colluded with the Russians. Well, we all know now that it was a hoax. We all know now that there was no there. But what's one of the things that started to become evident at the end of the year, and this was started in December. Inspector General Horowitz, an individual who was tied or was given the responsibility of investigating the intelligence agencies and looking into how they went about obtaining FISA warrants, obtaining the warrants which they used to spy on Americans who were involved in the Trump campaign. Well, one of the very foundational warrants that they used had to do with a gentleman named Carter Page. All right. Now, Carter Page worked with the Trump campaign, and it was believed that he was in part colluding, once again, with Russians, that he and President Trump and the campaign, they were all colluding with the Russians. Well, it was discovered, and it was actually presented in a hearing back in December of 2019, that there were serious problems with the FISA warrant that was put forth. In fact, here's a brief statement that was put forth by IG Horowitz when he testified before the Senate. Here it is.
In light of these concerns, the FISA statute and Department and FBI policies and procedures have established important safeguards to protect the FISA application process from irregularities and abuse. Among the most important are the requirements in FBI policy that every FISA application must contain a, quote, full and accurate, close quote, presentation of the facts, and that agents must ensure that all factual statements in FISA applications are, quote, scrupulously accurate, close quote. These are the standards for all FISA applications, regardless of the investigation's sensitivity, and it is incumbent upon the FBI to meet them in every application. Nevertheless, we found that investigators failed to meet their basic obligations of ensuring that the FISA applications were scrupulously accurate. We identified significant inaccuracies and omissions in each of the 4 applications, 7 in the first application and a total of 17 by the final renewal application. For example, the Crossfire Hurricane team obtained information from Steele's primary subsource in January 2017 that raised significant questions about the reliability of the Steele reporting. This was particularly noteworthy because the FISA applications relied entirely on information from from the primary subsources reporting to support the allegation that Page was coordinating with the Russian government on 2016 U.S. presidential election activities. However, the FBI did not share this information with department lawyers, and it was therefore omitted from the last two renewal applications. All of the applications also omitted information that the FBI had obtained in August 2016, from another U.S. government agency detailing its prior relationship with Page, with Carter Page, including that Carter Page had been approved as an operational contact for that other agency from 2008 to 2013, that Page had provided information to the other agency concerning his prior contacts with certain Russian intelligence officers, and that an employee of that other agency assessed that Carter Page had been candid with them. The FBI never followed up on that information. As a result of these 7 significant inaccuracies and omissions, relevant information was not shared with and consequently considered by department lawyers and the FISA court. And the FISA applications made it appear as though the evidence supporting probable cause was stronger than was actually the case.
Now, note that what he's talking about here primarily has to do with the fact that the people who were responsible with putting forth or requesting this warrant, putting forth the information, left out key facts that should have gone before the FISA court, did not present it to the attorneys, did not give the information to the attorneys. So it never was presented in terms of their requesting of the warrant. Key information, for example, like the fact that Carter Page was actually a CIA asset, right? The fact that he was, actually working for the government in his conversations. But I'll digress on that. The thing about it was that there were key errors and key omissions that were left out. Now, if you remember, Comey said he was totally vindicated by this whole process, that he felt like, well, what this report said was that he was in the clear. In fact, here's some further testimony from that particular hearing, where Inspector IG Horowitz was actually presented with information or with the quote from what Comey said and what he had to say about it.
The former FBI Director James Comey said this week that your report vindicates him. Is that a fair assessment of your report?
I think the activities we found here don't vindicate anybody who touched this.
Okay. Director Comey, the reporter, is asking him, can I ask you a question on FISA abuse? It's a major issue for the Republicans. Do you have a total confidence in the dossier when you used it to secure a surveillance warrant and also in the subsequent renewals? This was asked in December of 2018, about a year ago. Comey, I have total confidence that the FISA process was followed, that the entire case was handled in a thoughtful, responsible way by DOJ and the FBI. I think the notion that FISA was abused here is nonsense. Would it be fair to say that you take issue with that statement?
Certainly our findings were that there were significant problems with
So when Comey speaks about FISA, you shouldn't listen.
While our review of these issues and follow-up with case agents is still ongoing, we have not made materiality judgments for these or other errors or concerns we identified. At this time, we have identified an average of about 20 issues per application reviewed, with a high of approximately 65 in one application and less than 5 in another application. All of this was in the report. But wait, there's more. It says the FBI and NSD officials we interviewed indicated to us that there were no efforts by the FBI to use existing FBI and NSD oversight mechanisms to perform comprehensive strategic assessments of the efficacy of the Woods procedures or FISA accuracy, to include identifying the need for enhancements to training and improvements in the process, or increased accountability measures. Once again, this is all stuff that's in the report. What he's telling you is this, is that literally of almost every application I think it was like 96% of the applications, they found errors, right? 96% of the applications. And these errors were not just like spelling errors. These were errors where, number one, they're supposed to make sure that they're providing all of the information that's supposed to go to the court. Because once again, the FISA court is supposed to be presented with all of the information, with all of the relevant information. Well, things like, for example, the fact that, they knew that Carter Page wasn't an agent. They knew that he was working for the CIA. Stuff like that got left out. But see, in the event that that happens, there's a thing called the Woods procedures. All right. And these Woods procedures are in place to make sure that they have done everything that they can to make sure that all of the information in there is true, accurate, and that it's all of the information. What he's saying is that didn't happen in 96% of the cases. That's what they found. That's what he found in his investigation. Now, mind you, you're not hearing anything about any of this. In fact, it wasn't until recently that the New York Times finally noted in a Friday article. I'm sorry, wait, no, that wasn't just recently. That was today. They finally noted in this article that, there were problems with this one investigation over here with Carter Page where, the Russians paid for the dossier and the Russians actually were participating in a misinformation campaign. In fact, here's a clip from the article. Here's a clip from the article right here. The Trump administration has declassified several footnotes from a report about the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation, providing details hinting anew at the possibility that Russia may have sown disinformation in a dossier used to investigate a former Trump campaign aide. So they're just now reporting on something that was news 4 months ago, almost 5 months ago. They're just reporting on it now because, now the footnotes that have been released and made public make it clear that, that was wrong. But they have completely ignored the most recent report that shows that this wasn't the only time. See, in this particular article, they go on to say, matter of fact, I'll read it for you. Mr. Trump and his allies have sought to discredit the entire Trump-Russia investigation by conflating it with the surveillance of Mr. Page, although that was a small portion of it because the wiretapping relied in part on the flawed Steele dossier. Now, folks, let us be clear. You've already heard back in December that it relied entirely on Steele, the dossier, and the person who gave the information to Steele entirely. But yet they're like, that had to do with that. But in the end, that's what the entire Russia investigation was tied to. Folks, if there's anything that we have to learn, that we can learn from whether it was 9/11 or whether it's now the current COVID-19 crisis, is that we have to be very careful. And this is the reason why I'm sharing this with you. We have to be very careful that in our desire to seek security, that we don't give away our liberty. The FISA court directly came out of the Patriot Act. It was the result of fears because we wanted to make sure that we could track terrorists if they were here in this country. We wanted to be able to surveil them, know what's going on. We want to be able to find chatter so that we could potentially thwart these potential actions, these potential terrorist acts, right? But we see here that it's being abused and how it was abused because these were individuals who wanted to make sure that they took down Trump. They wanted to make sure he didn't become president. When he became president, they wanted to make sure that they could do whatever they could to remove him from office. Well, how do I relate that to today? Well, right now we have politicians, in particular, sheriffs, some sheriffs, we have some governors, we have people who are instituting policies right now that are violating the fundamental rights of Americans. And they're doing so by claiming, well, it's for security. We're trying to protect you. But as we've seen, what happened, like in the case of the FISA courts, like in the case of the Patriot Act, is that when you give away liberty, the government almost never gives it back. And and not only do they not give it back, there are those within government who will seek to use those to further undermine our liberties. That's why it's important. See, folks, the founders, and once again, you guys already know this, the founders had a healthy skepticism of power, of those in authority and government. It's the reason why they created the system that they did with the checks and balances that they did. It's also the reason why they talked over and over and over again about the importance of making sure that no matter what form of government we have, that we make sure that we hold government accountable, that the rights of the people are more important than the rights of the government. In fact, the government doesn't have rights. The government has things that they can do and a bunch of things they can't do. And as we give up our rights for things that they can do, they will seek, and I'm not saying all people in government, but I'm saying the natural propensity of power of those in government is to take control. And some people, they believe they're doing it for good means. Right? They believe people who want to take guns away from people, they believe that they want to take away the Second Amendment. They believe they're protecting people. People who want to take away your tax dollars and implement a government program, they believe that they know better how to spend your money than you do. People who tell you what your kids can read, people who tell you what you can believe. These are all people who believe they're telling it to you because, well, they're doing the right thing. Well, don't ever, 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 ever give up your liberty for security. Don't ever give up your liberty. Always question government. In this particular case, we see a pinpoint example of how a crisis was used to infringe on our liberties or to give up. We gave additional power to the government because of what happened in a crisis. And now all of a sudden we see how that's coming back to bite us, how literally it is being used as an attempt to overthrow our government. I know that's a big word, but when you have people who are literally, ignoring the law and their responsibilities and lying in these forms in order to be able to surveil American citizens, in this particular case, the president, because they can do it to the president, they can do it to anybody. They can do any one of us. But when they are able to do that, it's very little that the government is not capable of. Anyway, thought you guys might want to chew on that for a while. Anyway, folks, hey, that's going to be it for today's CRATV. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, telling your friends about the California Republican Assembly. We are the conscience of the Republican Party. You guys take care.